Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, How to Plan a Migration to AWS, the Cox Automotive story. When you joined today's webinar, you selected Join, either by phone call or the computer audio. If for any reason you'd like to change your selection, you can do so by accessing your audio pane in your control panel. Also from this control panel, you will have the opportunity to submit questions to today's presenters by typing your questions into the questions pane. We will collect these and address them during the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. If for any reason we could not get to your question, we plan on responding to each of you personally through email. The deck will be available through SlideShare along with a recording of the webinar 2 to 3 days after conclusion of this presentation, so keep an eye out for that email. My name is Carmen Puccio, and I'm a Partner Solutions Architect here at Amazon Web Services, and I'll be your speaker and moderator for today's webinar. So in today's webinar, we're going to talk about CloudHealth and how their migration assessment simplifies the process of migrating assets from your data centers to the AWS Cloud by analyzing usage and performance of on-premises workloads. CloudHealth then makes recommendations on instance types, regions, reservations, and associated project costs for those workloads. We will also talk about how Cox Automotive was able to efficiently model their workloads for migration and optimize their infrastructure once they were running on the cloud. Post-migration, Cox was able to further leverage CloudHealth to automate and optimize cost and performance of AWS services, including Amazon EC2, Amazon RDS, and Amazon EBS. So before we get to Cox and the CloudHealth story, let's just talk about what sets AWS apart. First and foremost, customers have selected AWS for years because we have proven ourselves committed to customer success, or as we call it, our customer obsession. At AWS, we start with our customers first, and then we work backwards from there. And when you look at our roadmap, it's amazing that roughly 90 to 95% of our roadmap is driven by what our customers tell us. We believe that AWS stands apart in the market because of the 6 factors you see here. And to touch on a couple, we'll talk about the pricing philosophy. We've lowered our prices on 62 different occasions in the last 8 years, largely in the absence of any competitive pressure to do so. And that's because we tend to be a company that focuses on what customers want. When it comes to our ecosystem, AWS has a rapidly growing partner ecosystem made up of 2 main categories: independent software vendors and systems integrators. ISVs provides software solutions that are either hosted on or integrated with the AWS Cloud. SIs design, build, or manage solutions for the AWS Cloud. We also have the AWS Marketplace, which is a managed and curated software catalog with an e-commerce storefront that helps customers innovate faster and reduce costs, making it easy to discover, evaluate, procure, and immediately deploy third-party software solutions like CloudHealth inside of their AWS accounts. So when it comes to migrating to AWS and what customers are achieving, they're really doing some amazing things. Customers, again, look to AWS because of the things like agility and cost savings and elasticity and the breadth of functionality around our services that help them deploy globally in minutes. You see a number of examples there, but just to touch on one, when it comes to scale, Netflix is a great example of what can be done on AWS, considering that Netflix consumes 40% of the US internet bandwidth at peak hours. You need not only scalability, but reliability with a global footprint to meet the demand for your customers. They have tens of thousands of instances running across multiple regions, hundreds of microservices, and serve hundreds of thousands of requests per second, along with serving billions of hours of content per month out of AWS. And when it comes to barriers to cloud adoption, customers are ready to adopt and start migrating, but they could run into some challenges. One of the ones we hear about is upfront costs. And it's important to remember that in cloud computing, it's built around a pay-as-you-go pricing model. You pay for what you use, and there are options in the compute category, like reserved instances or spot, that can help you provide a significant discount if your workloads fall into that model. Tools like CloudHealth can help you create and optimize a TCO for migrating to the cloud so you can achieve the cost savings you're looking for. When it comes to lack of cloud expertise, this is where creating a cloud center of excellence is the most critical foundational investment an organization can make. Building a cross-functional team from a diverse group of individuals who are willing to learn are perfect for your cloud center of excellence, and those individuals will be the ones to help create a culture of experimentation and teach others as they progress through their journey in cloud adoption. So when it comes to AWS and the APN Partner Network, Enterprises migrating to AWS require expertise, tools, and alignment of businesses and IT strategy. Many organizations can accelerate their migration and their time to results through partnership. And it's important to remember that regardless of where you are in your cloud journey, APN partners can help you. And this is one of the reasons we have the AWS Partner Competency Program. And within that, we have the AWS Migration Competency Partner Program, which CloudHealth is a member of. And in there, it's intended to highlight partners who help customers migrate their existing workloads to AWS while helping customers take advantage of AWS's security and architectural best practices. And it acts as a clear recommendation of tool sets that drive consulting partners and customers to migration success, and is intended to highlight partners who offer a low-risk path to AWS from their current environments. And as a result of that, the bar has been set extremely high to admit only partners with a proven track record of success in moving and enabling customers, as well as having sufficient skilled personnel to perform multiple migration projects. And what you're seeing here is the AWS migration process. And this is what we sometimes call the mental model, and it's built from the AWS Cloud Adoption Framework, or CAF. And it's a simple and agile process to achieving sustainable business value with AWS Cloud services. We could spend an entire session talking about CAF, so I just wanted to just highlight at a very high level a couple of these. So when it comes to discovery, this is where you want to do your portfolio discovery and planning to deeply collect and analyze data about the applications in your portfolio and build a project plan. Ideally, you want a tool in this space, and you don't want to rely on a CMDB to discover your data center. CloudHealth's a tool that can help in this area by helping you assess and model your workloads for migration, and then manage and optimize your infrastructure for costs, usage, performance, and security. And lastly, when it comes to AWS core migration services, we're constantly evolving our services while trying to make it easier for our customers to migrate workloads to the cloud. So regardless of whether it's a customer is trying to move their servers, databases, or their data to the cloud, the services and tools that help with the migration all share a common goal, and that's to facilitate a migration to AWS by minimizing downtime and application workload impact and trying to minimize data loss. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Joe Kinsella from CloudHealth and let him tell his story.
Thank you, Cameron. So my name's Joe Kinsella. I'm the CTO and founder of CloudHealth Technologies, and over the next 15-20 minutes, I'll give you a quick overview of our experience working with our customers with migration and what CloudHealth as a product and company and partner can do for you. So I'd like to start by introducing CloudHealth, which is we are a we're a cloud service management company that is a global organization with 8 locations around the world that delivers a SaaS-based product that actually allows customers to have a single pane of glass into their Amazon resources and applications, as well as their on-premise, both including VMware as well as physical infrastructure and even private clouds. We integrate with all the products and clouds that our customers use. So we integrate with vSphere. We integrate with all the various different Amazon services from EC2 to Lambda to CloudTrail. And in addition, we integrate with the tools and technologies that customers use in supporting their applications in cloud environments, things like Chef and Puppet and Ansible and Datadog and New Relic and Jira and so on. So with that said, I think it's important just to note that as a company, we're the market leader in this space, and I'll walk you through and give you a quick introduction to our value proposition. So CloudHealth actually is one of the largest providers of cloud service management in the market. So we have, just across Amazon alone, over $3.5 billion of spend under management, which means we work with both small customers as well as some of the largest customers in the world. So we have customers that are outliers in every respect in the infrastructure they use, that consume, they're the top 3 users of EC2 or S3. But most importantly, we work across all of these customers to help them drive optimization and good governance across their infrastructure. And as part of that, we actually help customers make reservation purchases. About $50 million of reservation purchases through Amazon actually flow through CloudHealth on a monthly basis. And we also integrate with and process customers' billing and usage and performance data, on a near real-time basis. So let's talk about migration. So across the various different topics that CIOs and enterprises are concerned about, when asked the question of what are the top topics that are on their mind, migration is one of the most prevalent topics that comes up, both in the market, and we see this across our customer base as well. So you can see here that 3 of the top 5 questions actually are very specifically related to migration. Now, why is this? There's a big shift that's occurring across the market, and this shift really started probably 18 plus months ago, where increasingly enterprises started to look at Amazon as not just a component of their overall cloud strategy, but in many cases it has become the centerpiece of their cloud strategy. And so in order to really unlock the innovation and the agility that comes with using public cloud infrastructure like Amazon, increasingly companies are looking to migrate their workloads into the cloud. And so this, of course, creates a variety of different challenges. There's the challenges of figuring out what to migrate, when to migrate, how to migrate, and then just gaining the experience that allows you to be successful in operating these applications after migration. You can see here that there's a variety of different success factors and challenges that customers run into. So you can see that in general, we find across our customer base, when customers move their on-premise infrastructure into Amazon, they almost always achieve the agility and innovation that really brought them to Amazon in the first place. But we also find that there's challenges in actually driving that migration. So these challenges include the challenges of really just getting an assessment of what it's going to cost. I think one of the common topics we hear from our customers is just the challenge of getting what they call an apples-to-apples comparison of what I'm spending right now on-premise in my data center compared to what I'll spend after I migrate to Amazon. There's also the challenges of just the cost to operate and really being able to manage and optimize. One of the great powers of Amazon as a platform is there's a variety of different ways that you can manage and optimize your costs. And in particular, if you architect for some of the underlying services that are built into Amazon, you can really disrupt the overall cost structure of different applications in the cloud. So these are challenges. I think in general we see that everyone who does a migration confronts challenges, and we'll kind of talk to how CloudHealth can be part of solving those challenges for you. Okay, so CloudHealth really is positioned in 2 areas for you, which is I mentioned at the beginning that we're a single pane of glass that allows you to pull together all of your applications and infrastructure, both on-premise and in Amazon, into one console. And from that one console, you can actually manage and optimize that infrastructure. So one of the keys is that as part of a migration where CloudHealth really can help you is we have the insight of what's actually running on-premise in both your private clouds as well as your physical infrastructure. And we take that data, the asset, the configuration, the usage, the performance data, and we collect and analyze and trend it for you so that when it comes time to actually do a migration, you can get really quick time to value assessments of what it would take to migrate, what you should provision, how you can optimize it, and where you should place it in the cloud. And once you actually are completed with your migration, CloudHealth also is the platform that allows you to manage and optimize and use a single platform that spans your entire organization for management and optimization of your applications post-migration. So what you're looking at here is an example of a CloudHealth migration recommendation. You can see here that this is an example of a recommendation that moves 25 servers into Amazon from on-premise VMware infrastructure. And you can see several things I'll just call out, which is you can actually produce these assessments within fractions of a second. You can have complete control over what you target, so which applications or business groups that you want to actually get migration recommendations for. And it will make recommendations of not just how to move it, where to place it, but also what storage to attach to it, what instance types to provision, how you can optimize it using cost mechanisms like reserved instances. And it will also do an apples-to-apples comparison of what your on-premise infrastructure is costing you compared to what it will cost you post-migration. So it's very powerful. It really eliminates one of the great friction points of a migration, which is organizations at the early phases of planning are always struggling with what should I move and how much will it cost me and how do I optimize it. And using CloudHealth, you can actually get that in fractions of a second. I should also note as part of that migration that it assesses all aspects of a workload. It assesses compute and memory and swap and storage and network throughput. So when you look at the different approaches to migration, there's really different types of approaches to what you migrate and then how you migrate that occur across our customer base. So if you look on the left side, a typical early migration that a customer will do will often start with picking workloads or applications that have very few dependencies that are usually lower risk so that you allow your organization to actually get some operating experience and migration experience and post-migration management experience with applications that have lower risk. And then there's multiple different approaches you can actually take to migrating those workloads. So lift and shift is a common one where organizations actually pick up the workload, move it into Amazon exactly as is, and then run it. But also we see increasingly, and this is very common across our customer base, both partial refactors as well as full transitions, full redesigns of applications to really take advantage of the full services and underlying fabric of Amazon. So I guess the point to note is there's really no right answer across where you start with migration and how you choose to go do it. The simple truth will be you'll probably do all of these over the course of a large migration of global data center infrastructure into Amazon. But CloudHealth can support you in each of these different approaches. Okay. So before I hand off, I want to do a quick overview of CloudHealth and what we provide as a platform. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we do cloud service management. We deliver a SaaS solution that provides optimization and governance for Amazon customers as well as customers who have infrastructure and data centers, particularly VMware customers. And we bring all of this data that comes from these environments into one SaaS product in the cloud, and we allow you to actually see your on-premise infrastructure and your cloud infrastructure side by side, and very quickly actually migrate and get migration assessments and get advice on how to optimize and manage your applications and services post-migration in the cloud. The product is a market leader across Amazon. You can find it in the Amazon Marketplace. So feel free to go to the Marketplace and search for CloudHealth, and you'll actually be able to purchase it right from there. And with that said, I would like to hand off to Jason at Cox, and he'll take it from here.
Thanks, Joe. Jason Cornell with Cox Automotive. Before I start getting into our story a little bit, I'm going to just tell you a little bit about Cox Automotive so you're aware of who we are and kind of where we're coming from. So we're a leading provider of products and services around the automotive ecosystem worldwide. We are a family of over 25 brands that provide leading solutions in digital marketing, retail, wholesale, and financial areas, all focused in the automotive marketplace. So some interesting facts about us. Globally, we have over 34,000 team members, all focused on our vision to transform the way the world buys, sells, and owns cars. We support over 40,000 clients daily trying to achieve this mission, and we have some of the most recognized brands for our consumers for searching, researching, buying, and selling cars in AutoTrader and Kelley Blue Book. So a little bit about why we're migrating to AWS. A lot of it's the same reasons as many others are migrating to AWS. We want to bring new products, new services to the market faster. We want to be agile. We want to be able to come up with new ideas and try them out, and limit the investment that it takes to try out these new ideas to see if they can benefit our clients and customers across the industry. We also want to focus our team members on strategic initiatives. We don't want to focus on racking servers, on doing all the undifferentiated items that take part in IT and kind of a legacy on-premise environment. We want to focus on the higher value, higher revenue generating benefits for our clients. And another thing we have is an organization of our size. We have over 50 data centers around the world. We want to be able to reduce those data centers, take advantage of better economies of scale, the environmental impacts that it has of having all these facilities and all this infrastructure, and obviously the cost savings that go around with this. And then data center refreshes. When you have this many facilities and when you have refresh cycles coming up on compute, on storage, on networking, your costs quickly can scale, where if you're consolidated to a smaller number of data centers and leveraging AWS, we don't have to worry about those massive capital infrastructure investments, and we can focus on our products and services for our customers. So some of the pre-migration planning and analysis that we went through. So when we first started looking at it, we have over 50 data centers. So it was looking at how do we focus on a smaller subset that we can have the teams focus on, and figure out what would make the most sense. So, some of the factors we looked into was, location, where the location was located, what the contracts were for these locations, the cost involved with the different facilities, the capabilities that the facilities have, and the brands of our services and solutions that we're serving out of those facilities. That helped us narrow down kind of what our focus was initially for the various different data centers, which then allowed us to look at, for those facilities, what solutions are in those facilities, what solutions could be rehosted or replatformed, which ones needed to stay on-premise because they're just very legacy monolithic solutions and it doesn't make sense to run in a public cloud. So after we got down to kind of a manageable set of solutions, we're able to figure out, what will they cost. So if we take an application that's mostly virtualized and we look at the lift and shift aspects of it, based on the configuration, what would it be if we just moved those to AWS? So if they had the same vCPU, same memory, storage footprint as configured on-premise, what would that cost us to run in a region on AWS? And at the same time, what if we just based it on utilization? On-premise, we are very high density when on our virtualized platforms. So we're able to do a lot of memory sharing, CPU sharing. So teams can request very high, very large size VMs, and there's not really an additional cost for them to do so, because we're able to take advantage of the economies of scale internally. When we go to AWS, like Carmen mentioned, I mean, you're paying for the instance size, per hour. You're paying for the storage, per byte, whether you use it or not. So we have to be more conscious of how our system's designed and to make sure we're optimized when we move the systems there. And then just looking at where do we migrate them to? Can we just lift it and shift it and move it to AWS? And run it on AWS? Are there any complications with whether it's integrations or legacy solutions that maybe won't be the best platform to run it on? And then finally, who's going to do that work? How much has to change in the application? Do we have to change a lot of the internals of the application for it to run in a public cloud, or is it very limited? What's the maturity of the team that would be supporting it and handling the move? What's the overall complexity of the solution, and how does it integrate with all of our other solutions across the enterprise? And then finally, what's the client impact of doing a migration like this or moving a solution to the cloud? So some of the things we were able to do, we leveraged CloudHealth extensively in this approach. So when we started looking for solutions that we wanted to analyze our primarily VMware virtualized infrastructure on-premise, is we wanted something that was agentless. We couldn't afford to have an agent-based solution that we had to go to each product, each solutions group, and go through all the different levels of testing through development environments, through QA environments, if an agent was required, to make sure there was no application impacts, performance impacts, anything that would impact any of our customers. So that was one of the first keys, that we had to have an agentless solution, which CloudHealth provided. And then we have, like I mentioned, the 50 different environments across the world that we needed to bring in this data from. So we needed to be able to analyze and figure out what was in these data centers, what the virtual infrastructure is, and be able to do reporting and assessments across a very, very large environment. So the next step then, after we were able to bring in all this data and use the agentless approach, we're able to start pinpointing different solutions to determine what their cost would be. I mentioned on the previous slide that one of the things on-premise is we can have very, very heavy consolidation of resources. We went to AWS for some environments. We want to be able to better right-size based on the actual utilization of the instances. So if we only need two vCPU, that's what we want to put on AWS for the instance sizing. We don't want to have to go with an 8 vCPU and pay more, for those resources that potentially won't be used. The next thing it allowed us to do is to help plan and budget for our costs. So we could easily look and see if we run on demand for this solution, here's what our costs will be. And if we want to buy 1-year RIs or 3-year RIs, here's how it can lower our costs, and here's the benefit. Here's the ROI on moving the solution to AWS. And then another thing, we have lots of different departments, groups, stakeholders across the organization with all the brands that we have, all the solutions that we need to be able to provide the costs in a consistent manner. Instead of having spreadsheets that everybody's using different versions and trying to keep in sync, what's the latest version, what formula is team A using, what formula is team B using, did somebody change something between this version of the document and that version of the document, be able to use the same solution and look at all those metrics and see the output is going to be the same, whether it's solution A or solution B and a different team is doing each, is very beneficial for us because it keeps a lot of the confusion out of the equation and out of the discussions. And the next thing was speed and ease of use. The ability to look at a data center or look at a virtual center and the hundreds or thousands of instances that are running there and understand if we just took these as is and moved those to AWS, here's what our cost would be. It's very quick to do, saving hours and hours of time than in the past where we'd have to be exporting this data, manipulating it, managing it in spreadsheets, pulling data from AWS to figure out what the cost would be to compare like to like from on-premise to AWS to be able to give us some kind of ballpark estimates for our leadership teams to make decisions. So our current architecture, we have our 1 through 50 plus data centers. What we've done is we've deployed the CloudHealth aggregator as a virtual machine in each of our facilities, and then we have our virtual centers that are in those facilities feeding their data into the aggregator, which then feeds it to CloudHealth, which does all the processing and reporting and everything for us. We've been a CloudHealth customer for several years now before we started using the data center components of it, just to manage our AWS spend, all of the reporting, the optimizations, the RI management. So now we've just extended it now to provide a kind of hybrid consolidated view or single pane of glass, if you will, of the on-prem and the AWS environments. So our goal in the end state, is we start retiring data centers and consolidating to core data centers across the organization, is to have where those core data centers are, we keep the aggregators there. As solutions continue to be lifted and shifted or need to be moved, and we need to be able to analyze to figure out what makes the most sense and what those costs will be. We'll have less aggregators, less facilities, but we'll still use CloudHealth as that single pane of glass to analyze it over time. So our migration strategy and timeline, we're migrating tens of thousands of servers, thousands of terabytes of storage over the 50 data centers. As I mentioned, we're breaking it down into a manageable components that we can focus on. So we've identified approximately a dozen data centers initially that we're focused on, that we can then within those data centers figure out what applications, what solutions are in there. Based on those applications and solutions, figure out which solutions may be retired, and there's new cloud native solutions being developed natively on AWS, which solutions would be lift and shift candidates, which solutions would be replatforming, and which solutions have the greatest revenue impacts, the greatest impacts to our clients, and which solutions have integrations across a lot of other solutions that may make more sense to move to AWS faster. So it allows us to bring in all these different varying inputs and make decisions not only on costs, but on everything else around the organization to deliver it. But it's definitely a phased approach. We're not trying to boil the ocean because we understand that that's way too much work. That's way too much to focus on. So we wanted teams to be able to focus on the specific facilities or applications and solutions to allow us to be successful. And so we're currently in mid-migration of some solutions. We're migrating targeted solutions focused on those dozen data centers. We have some solutions that are running in production. We have some that we've retired on-premise, and we've rewritten them as cloud-native solutions on AWS. And then we have others that we've replatformed and or lifted and shifted to AWS, leveraging CloudHealth to be able to give us that insights and knowledge that otherwise would have been very challenging and complex to acquire through spreadsheets and a bunch of other manual methods. So some of the stuff we've seen so far, we can analyze an entire data center environment very quickly at a macro level. So if somebody comes to us and says, if we are able to target this data center, how many VMs do we have in that data center? What would it be at a macro level to take all those VMs and put them on AWS as a straight lift and shift? We can get that very, very quickly now, within minutes. When in the past it would take hours or potentially days or weeks, depending on the environment and what infrastructure is running there, and what reporting or capabilities we have within that data center. Improved accuracy now because everybody's using the same model for cost estimates. We're bringing in the actual AWS per instance costs. We're getting the modeling for if you buy the reserved instances, here are your cost savings that you'll achieve. Here's how much it'll cost you on demand. So it's a lot less confusing. You don't have a lot of conversations around how did you devise this information? How did you figure out how many instances you need or how many of this type you need in this data center? We can easily look at it and say, well, this is the configuration of these systems as they're running today, as a production application on-premise, or this is the utilization of those instances on-premise today serving customers. Here's what it would compare to on AWS. So it's an apples-to-apples comparison, and it's not different people's perspectives. It's all based on the data. The next thing is reducing the spend. Be able to right-size the instance types is huge. Because you don't want to have very oversized instances when you're paying for those instances, regardless if you use 1% of the capacity or 100% of the capacity. So being able to right size before you move those instances over is a big key to us, and that helps reduce spend significantly. The saved employee time I mentioned several times, and those that have gone through scenarios like this or looked at this, even between data centers, trying to price out or figure out all the capacity, all of the instances that are running, and comparing them to either another platform or even the same platform on newer hardware, if it may be on-premise. It can get challenging, and it can take a lot of manual time and effort working in spreadsheets and PowerPoints and all kinds of stuff. So getting rid of all that is very beneficial because we can just focus on analyzing them and making decisions and moving forward to start getting the applications moved. And that leads into the last one, where the faster deployment in the cloud. We can get infrastructure deployed at basically unlimited capacity. Carmen mentioned in the beginning how they can scale the capacity that it far exceeds anything that we would ever require. So we don't have to worry about the lead times for weeks or months for power or cooling or storage or compute resources within the data center. We can have that at a click of a button or an API call. And we can have that available at our fingerprints. So the next steps, we're working with all of our solutions groups across our organization as we continue on our journey with AWS. More and more people keep learning. We keep learning more about new services, capabilities, better ways to do things. So it's sharing that knowledge, sharing that information internally, collaborating, training and enabling all the teams across the organization to become more successful. And then we're going to continue to manage our infrastructure with CloudHealth. So the ability for us on the AWS side alone, just to look at all of the costs, the usage, the performance, trending, by application or line of business or solutions group, or model that data however we want to see the data. Or if an executive wants to see it one way, they can easily see it that way without a lot of manual work or effort. Managing RI purchases across a large AWS environment is key. Being able to optimize our spend to identify what's running on demand, what could we be running on RIs, what would our savings be for doing so. It's a great big undertaking, and leveraging CloudHealth for that on RDS, on EC2, saves a significant amount of money that we can invest into other revenue generating activities. And then automating the cleanup of unused resources. So whether it's EBS volumes that are still out there after somebody terminated an EC2 instance because they didn't set the flag to terminate the EBS volume at termination, or other resources that are left that should be cleaned up, it's key to allow us to automate against that and not have to worry about it. It's just occurring in the background all the time, always saving us money and optimizing what we're running on AWS. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Carmen for any questions.
Yep, thank you. So there's a couple of questions in here, and I'm going to try and summarize a couple because they hold a similar theme. And the first one is for Joe from CloudHealth, and maybe you could talk a little bit about how you guys pull in your costs. So how do you actually model for the on-premises costs, and then where are you referencing in order to actually match that up with AWS costs as part of the migration portfolio?
Sure. Yeah. So that's a great question. So what we do is on-premise, we gather all the different types of configurations that customers are using across their VMs, and we allow customers to define configuration-based costs. So allowing them to say that a VM that's running this amount of CPU and this amount of memory, I charge a certain amount per hour or per day for that VM. And so there's a variety of different patterns that customers use, but basically it's configuration-based, it's configuration-driven. And once they have that, they have a pretty good understanding of their costs and also a breakout of the different components of their costs. And we allow customers to trend and report, and even report down to different business groups their costs on-premise. And then on the Amazon side, we pull from two data sources. I think one of the great strengths of Amazon is it provides some of the richest data sources around cost and usage. So they provide what they call their detailed billing record, or DBR, as well as their cost and usage report, or CUR. And we take both of these, correlate them, and then compare the costs pre and post migration.
Awesome. Awesome. So there's a couple of other here. How about for Cox? There was one that talks about, as part of the application assessment, was there anything that you found as part of the assessment that actually could not be migrated to AWS? And if so, how did you handle that? And did you create any interdependencies between the two?
Sure. So yeah, I mean, we have some legacy platforms, AS400s and such, that obviously aren't moving to AWS right now. There are also some very, very large database sizes, which are now with X1 instances and everything, could potentially be moved to AWS. Some of those we've deprioritized and are going to focus on decoupling them and writing them more as cloud native solutions, instead of trying to move these giant, kind of monolithic applications with these databases that are storing pretty much everything in them. So those have been a couple that we've identified and just prioritized differently.
Okay. So another question for you, Jason, as well. Did you find that there was anything that you actually migrated that ended up costing more to run in AWS than it did on premises? And if so, how did you handle that? Was it something that you quickly attacked and you kind of refactored the application, or perhaps maybe you put some sort of auto scaling behind it? Was there anything like that that popped up as part of your migration?
Oh yeah, absolutely. A lot of it has been with learning the AWS platform and teams getting more familiar on their decisions. So the solution gets up on AWS. everything's fine. It may be in the ballpark of what it was on premise, and then as changes start to be made, if teams don't understand the cost implications of the decisions they're making, we always say you can do something 10 different ways on AWS, and each way has different cost and performance implications. So you have to really analyze it and take a look in some cases to see if I use this solution to store this content, it may cost me 1 cent a day. If I use this other way to store that content, it could be $10 a day. So you just have to be aware of the decisions you're making and why, and what the different implications are for making those decisions. So we've kind of worked through those as those have come up, and teams have used CloudHealth pretty extensively to dive into the cost in detail to figure out what's driving different costs, where they can make optimizations to improve the efficiency.
Okay. And this is a question, I guess, for both of you. What metric do you find to be the most important to executive management and when trying to move forward to the cloud? So you're in that opportunity evaluation phase and you run a tool like CloudHealth. What's the most important thing that gets bubbled up that helps them make a decision to actually move forward?
To move forward with migration, I take it, right, Carmen?
Correct.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, I think there's the metric that very few people track that is, I think, the overriding metric that everyone's driving towards is really just the agility and innovation it unleashes, and then unfortunately it's a qualitative metric. So I think most of our customers fall back to quantitative measures. So they look at cost, they look at cost efficiency, they look at cost savings. So one of the common reports in our product that gets used frequently is called the cost savings report, which shows how the organization has optimized their costs post-migration through different mechanisms like using different storage mediums or using different reservation types. And so it's a powerful way to demonstrate what you can't really do on premise, which is you can do constant optimization post-migration that gives you better economics.
Awesome. So there's another one as well, and this one's for Cox, and this one goes hand in hand with creating a cloud center of excellence, and it's something that we talk about quite extensively here at AWS, and how that team's going to help you move forward, and it's going to take your applications and drive them, to their next generation state. So considering you were going through this migration and you were pulling in all of this data, how did you handle the cloud center of excellence aspect and employee buy-in, and how did you account for potentially folks taking on new and more interesting roles and kind of defining what their scope's going to be in the next generation world?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we're still in the process of a lot of that. I think it's an evolving area that's going to continue to evolve for us internally, because we can't just walk away from all of the solutions that we have decades invested in that are running, that are providing value for our clients. So it's been something we have a lot of teams that we're collaborating across, enterprise architecture teams, technical architecture teams, application development teams, operations teams are working very closely together with resources from over the organization. There's obviously some teams that are more cloud native maybe thinking or aligned, that kind of got it sooner maybe, that were developing some of the initial cloud native solutions and proving out the public cloud or AWS solutions can be a great thing for us. Now we're getting to some of our more mature solutions that we've had on premise for many, many years. I think a lot of it's just around education and training. Nothing in the industry stays the same. It's always evolving, it's always moving, it's always changing, and you're always going to have people, resources that some don't like change at all and are going to keep doing the same thing they've been doing, and there's those that are going to understand that change and keep learning and keep growing. So it's a ever-going thing that we have going on, but a lot of it has to do with collaboration and communication across all these teams.
Yeah, excellent answer. So one more for you as well, Jason. So another one that came up was you have this portfolio that you're assessing and figuring out what's going to go where, and you're getting right-sized information. And we talked about potentially refactoring or changing the footprint of some of those applications. How did you limit the growth creep or a drift in your plans when actually doing the migrations?
That's a very challenging one. We've had some teams that initially was going to be, we're going to do the bare minimum to get the solution up and running, and then down the road, all of a sudden it's gone from native, just Linux instances to containers and microservices and pretty much cloud native or close to cloud native solutions. And that one kind of within our organization falls within our product engineering kind of organization or application development teams. And some of them have done a lot of that and done a lot more than initially was thought that would go forward. And it's just if executive leadership buys in and everybody's good with the plan and the changes in the direction and how they're going to do it, that's fine. But it's challenging because everybody wants to, once they start getting into it, they want to use the new capabilities, the new features, the new functionality that AWS releases all the time. But you have to have the conversations, I think, with leadership, with the architects, to make sure you're making the best decisions to support the business and to support the company.
Awesome. So there's one more, and I think, to be honest with you, either Joe or Jason, you can both grab it. It's around TCO and building that TCO, and I talk about it a lot when I talk to the customers about you're doing your migration and you have that point in time where there's the migration bubble, and it's basically a point in time where you potentially have both environments up and running, and you want to limit that bubble because obviously you want to shut off the old legacy systems. So thinking about that bubble, how did you handle that, or on Jason's side, or Joe's side, how do you talk to customers about minimizing that bubble, making sure that they don't spend a significant amount in both worlds? Obviously taking into account, maybe they have existing contracts or licensing or infrastructure. The way that I typically talk about it as well is that's something that you prioritize accordingly. Maybe that's not the best candidate to move first. Maybe you add that a little bit later in your backlog and you tackle the things that are up for renewal first as part of your migration. So up to either one of you which want to go first, but it's an interesting question.
No, I mean, I think, Carmen, I'll go first as Joe. I think you kind of hit the most important point, which is the recognition that this is a problem. You call it the migration bubble. I call it the awkward period that customers find themselves in, where they have CFOs and financial analysts that are looking at the costs that they're spending in the cloud, and they're also looking at the fact that they're still actually spending the same amount of money to actually support and maintain their data center. And there's often awkward questions that get asked around, where is this value that the cloud has promised? And so I think, just being upfront about this, which is, being deliberate in terms of setting expectations that this will in fact occur, and then, as you said, choosing what to migrate first, so that you not only manage the risks from a migration perspective, but you also are showing the cost benefit that comes with migration. So it's a delicate balancing act, but I think step one is admitting that this will in fact occur, and then working with the key stakeholders to put together a plan that everybody supports to migrate your way through it. I'll hand it back to Jason.
Yeah, I'll just add a little bit to that. I agree with all of that. One of the other things that we try to promote is good hygiene. So, have everything as CI/CD pipelines. Have everything automated. Don't run your development QA, your non-production environments 24/7. If you only have teams that are working on it, 8 to 5, run it during those times, and then have it all fully automated so you can shut it down. So you're only paying for when you need those resources. The other thing we try to share is it may not be cheaper. The lower cost may not be the only goal. It may be to try to achieve more, to try to be more agile, to try to deliver solutions quicker. That may cost a little bit more, but you're able to deliver, solutions for our customers quicker, and that's the better outcome.
Yep. There's one for Joe, and we're going to touch on it at the end around the marketplace. But there seems to be a lot of questions about how folks can get invested and get started with CloudHealth. As I mentioned, earlier in the presentation, you guys do have a marketplace offering, but perhaps maybe you could just briefly touch on how to get started with the platform.
Sure, yeah. So we try to make this as frictionless as possible. I think, Carmen, you'll be talking to specifically the marketplace offer, but if you go to Amazon's AWS Marketplace, you can actually type in CloudHealth. You'll actually find our solution. You can purchase it right from the marketplace. And then enabling it is a process that's really quite simple, which is you can actually go in and add in your Amazon accounts. You can actually, from our console, actually download and deploy what Jason referred to as an aggregator, which is an agentless component that can actually collect data from your on-premise infrastructure. And you're off and running. At that point in time, the data will be flowing into CloudHealth SaaS solution, and you'll actually be able to start getting assessments of what to migrate, how to migrate it, and how much it will cost you to migrate.
Awesome, thank you. So with that said, I think we covered most of the questions, and I tried to summarize them as best as I could because there was some overlap. To those who did not get their questions answered, again, we will email you individually if there are any that we missed. But I just wanted to say thank you to Jason and thank you to Joe today for joining us in today's webinar. It's been fantastic having you guys present. And if I can move the slide forward one, there should be one more link that gives you a link to the marketplace that Joe was just talking about, and that's the CloudHealth offering. So let me see if I can get that to advance. And there it is right there. So when we send this slide out on SlideShare, you can get started with your 14-day free trial in the AWS Marketplace. Again, as Joe said, if you actually just go to the AWS Marketplace and you just type in CloudHealth, you'll get the link and you can sign up right there inside of your AWS account and you can get off and running in a very short time. So again, I wanted to thank everybody for joining today's webinar, and thank you again, Joe, and thank you again, Jason. It's been a pleasure.